My best friend disappeared when I needed her most, and now I'm torn between loving her and protecting my heart. I can't keep getting hurt again, I told myself, but her smile still makes my heart flutter. Is it time to let go? I need an outside perspective on this entire situation, but not from a friend's viewpoint. I want it from someone I do not know. If you are someone who knows me, please take everything you read here and keep it confidential. To provide some quick background information, I moved to the country in which I currently reside about 3 years ago. I had to leave almost everything to come here to this Muslim country, and I am originally from a Latin American country. The cultural shock was immense, and the level of education in schools here is approximately 1,000 times more sophisticated than in my home country, making it feel like I was attending university back home. As I mentioned, I moved to a new country and had no friends. The connections I had with my friends from my home country dissolved. We barely talk, and it is a miracle if we communicate occasionally. Additionally, when I moved here, it was during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I was also at the height of my depression, having just ended a relationship right before my arrival. At the school I enrolled in, I met my now best friend. When I say best friend, I mean that she is the only person I consider as such. I have only one best friend, anyone else is either a friend or a close friend, but only she holds the title of best friend. I have been best friends with her for about as long as I have been in this new country. We are very close, and she also considers me her best friend. We used to, and I emphasize used to, talk every day, whether in real life or online. Most days we were on calls for hours, engaged in hangouts with friends. I would sometimes surprise her by visiting at around 10 p.m., which is significant because her parents are very protective and have issues allowing her to go out with boys unless there is at least one other girl present. Therefore, my presence at her house elevates the level of trust significantly. Interestingly, despite this, her parents do not mind my visits too much since they have met me several times, and even all her siblings know me. Some of her sisters get excited when I come to visit. My family knows her as well, and she has even met my grandparents when they visited me here. We are so alike that some people, including ourselves, say we are just gender-bent versions of each other. To be blunt about how I feel about her, which is relevant to the whole situation, I love this girl, but not in the usual sense. I love her as a friend, as a best friend, someone who has supported her through her highs and lows. I love her platonically, but I also love her romantically, not in a sexual sense, but in a more conventional way. Out of all the best friends I have ever had, she is the first one I care for this deeply, and I believe that is part of the reason I love her romantically. I have never had someone so wonderful as a friend, someone so perfect that I wouldn't want to share them with anyone else. In some way, it feels that the best way to secure that connection is to be with them. I find it difficult to explain, but I care for her immensely. Even when she dated a boyfriend for a few months, I remained loving toward her as a friend and was genuinely happy for her happiness, although in the end her boyfriend turned out not to be that great. She's the only friend I have bought so many gifts for, and I deeply love this girl. I would even consider marrying her, but as we both have stated, both of us, we enjoy being best friends and nothing more. To be honest, I am content with this arrangement. Would I like her to be my girlfriend? Yes, but I also appreciate being her best friend a lot. However, it doesn't help that all the qualities she looks for in a potential partner align perfectly with me to some extent. A significant event occurred when I had to transfer schools. Everything remained the same, but she ended up moving to her home country about halfway through my time at the new school. That was significant, but everything was still fine. We communicated a lot, and we established a schedule to talk due to the time zone differences. This continued until she stopped responding to me. I would text her, but she wouldn't reply. This continued for nearly an entire month until she returned. She explained that she had been unwell and had essentially isolated herself. For context, this was not the first time she had done something like this. Previously, she would do it for about a week when feeling overwhelmed or stressed, but the difference this time was that she would at least communicate a little bit before. She had been coping with the pressure of starting university and struggling to make friends, so I understood why she disappeared. After a few months, she came back to the country, and we met up again. I visited her home in the middle of the night with some McDonald's, which are some of my favorite memories with just the two of us. Eventually, she returned to her home country to continue university and eventually made new friends, but that is when things began to decline. After she formed new friendships and reconnected with an old friend, she became less communicative. We had fewer calls and played games together less frequently because she preferred to spend time with her new friends and that old acquaintance. To be honest, I was happy for her, but it was disheartening that we were spending less time together and eventually barely communicated. Then came a time when I desperately needed her. I was extremely stressed and facing other issues, culminating in a complete breakdown and anxiety attack. Sadly, she was not there for me as she had been during the few times I needed her previously. When she finally returned, it felt like all of that trauma was forgotten. Eventually, my depression flared up and I ended up doing some reckless things. Once again, she was nearly absent, but this time, when she checked in on me to see if I was okay, my foolish personality and mindset led me to lie and say I was fine. I didn't want to burden her. She pressed the question one more time, but after I reassured her again that I was okay, she accepted that to some extent. Now keep in mind that when I am struggling, I still leave subtle signals for my friends, and I have told her that if I am in a dark place, she should push hard to get me to talk because I have difficulty asking for help. However, she did not press me. As time passed, she apologized for disappearing and not being there, and I told her it was okay since I was being somewhat unreasonable. Then she returned to the country and I went all out with her goodbye present. I made her a handwritten letter with some drawings, we are both artists, and crafted a flower from plastic spoons with a dyed green base, making it glow green when light is placed underneath, accented with white and black. She loved it, and I also gave her a ring during another hangout. She wears a lot of rings, but I cannot deny that I had romantic thoughts when giving her that ring. Then she returned to her home country, and we went into round 3 of her disappearing act, this time due to that old friend I mentioned. He used her as his therapist and harbored feelings for her, although she informed me she felt absolutely no romantic attraction to him. Being a people pleaser, she devoted all her time to him despite knowing their friendship was toxic. During that period, she finally started talking and venting to me again, but it was short-lived. After she broke things off with him, she found a new group of friends and again I lost her. Our communication became rare, and when we did talk, it was only briefly. However, just a few weeks ago, we began talking more frequently, which is where the reason for this post arises. Recently, I learned that my grandmother has cancer again, but this time it is terminal and she may not have long to live. At a minimum, she has about 4 years, but given the type of cancer she has, it could be less, and it is the kind of cancer that is painful. I broke down and desperately needed my best friend for emotional support. Since we had been communicating more recently, I hoped she would be there for me, but she wasn't. However, she returned just 2 days after I received the news, only for me to notice she was at her grandmother's house where she lost her only a year ago. She was clearly struggling with that loss, so I kept my struggles hidden and did not share my issues with her. She did not realize I was struggling, even after a week passed since I received my news, but I did not want to disclose my feelings, even when she pressed for me to talk. She only asked if I was okay twice and then disappeared again. After I managed to cope with my feelings, I found out that she had been hanging out with her friends from there. While I am happy she has friends, it has been nearly a year, and 90% of that time has been me watching my best friend post almost daily about her outings while her so-called best friend remain on the sidelines. To put it simply, I am exhausted and need a stable friendship, or at the very least, someone who will be there for me when it counts and who I can talk to regularly, not every day but at least more often. I do not know what to do. I do not want to continue getting hurt and let down by my best friend whom I love immensely. I understand she does not do this intentionally. It is simply her nature. Even when she realizes her behavior, she becomes anxious and doesn't know how to reinitiate conversations with me, despite my efforts to reassure her that she does not need to worry about it with me. Yet, I find that this reassurance does not suffice. I deeply care for her. I love being her best friend. I adore her smile, which makes my heart flutter, but I cannot continue if I am destined to get hurt and disappointed repeatedly. I do not want this to end, but I feel lost about what to do. I know that if I have another long conversation with her like I have in the past, we will be okay for a while. Eventually, she will likely revert to her previous habits. As far as I know, she has not faced a true loss of a close friend that was related to her failing in some manner. After experiencing that, one typically learns to take care of their friends, understand the importance of staying in contact, and ensuring their well-being. I fear I may end up being that lesson for her, but I do not want to be that person. I wish things were different, but as things stand, that may be how it plays out. The worst part is that not long ago, she expressed her feelings through a social media story instead of talking to someone. I literally want to help her with things I know I could assist her with, but given how I feel right now, I do not think I should reach out, which is incredibly frustrating. I find myself contemplating ending our friendship just when she needs someone, but I remain uncertain. I have reached a point where I am tired of being hurt continually. If you made it this far, I commend you. I apologize for my ramblings, I just do not know how to articulate everything correctly. I have experienced every emotion for her, and I still do not know what to do. Thank you for reading, and I apologize for my lengthy narrative. Goodbye. Story 2. Kidnapped at 13 by my supposed friend Ashley, I woke to her twisted smile and a nightmarish reality. Drink, she ordered as I succumbed to her drugs. Days of horror followed, filled with violence, despair, and a chilling threat. You know what will happen if you tell anyone. How did I survive? Warning, all details are true except for names. Warning, this post discusses violence, sexual assault, and animal abuse. I want to remain anonymous and this is my first post, so please be kind. This is somewhat of a rant, as I feel the need to express what I have experienced. I will start from the beginning so that it makes sense. When I was 13 years old, I attended an online private Christian school because I had been bullied in my previous schools. In this new school, another girl whom I will call Ashley was also new. She was 15 years old. We quickly became very close friends, partly because we had a lot in common and I was yearning for a friend. It is important to note that she was my first and closest friend up to that point, which made me overlook many red flags, including the fact that we had so much in common. As our friendship grew, we discovered that she lived relatively close to me, which was a 3-hour drive to her house. One day, she invited me to her home and I accepted. The moment I stepped out of the car and saw her for the first time, I could immediately discern that she had narcissistic traits. Everything about her exuded narcissism. I knew right then that I should have gone home and avoided her. However, I did not want to believe that someone I cared about could possess such characteristics. So I decided to give her a chance. That was my first mistake. The sleepover was not entirely terrible, but it left me reluctant to return. In fact, I hurried out of her house and accidentally left behind a few belongings. Several aspects made me want to leave, such as waking up each day to find her watching me and observing her violent treatment of her cat and other animals. Furthermore, there was something unsettling about her parents. The remainder of my visit was mostly normal until the drive home. Her mother drove me home and Ashley accompanied us to say goodbye at my house. During the car ride, she kept touching my neck, exhibiting an odd, almost obsessive fixation on it throughout the journey. When I arrived home, I showed her my room and then left her alone in it while I went to the bathroom. However, when I returned, I caught her playing with my stuffed animals. I assumed everything was normal, and eventually she departed, leaving everything seemingly fine. A few weeks later, while reorganizing my stuffed animals, I stumbled upon a camera. In my foolishness as a child, I destroyed it out of sheer terror, realizing that she had placed it there. I recognized it as hers because it bore her name. Consequently, I gradually ceased communication with her, and eventually things began to feel normal again. That was until she texted me asking me to come over. I declined, and she began to pressure and threaten me. She convinced me by reminding me of the items I had forgotten, and her threats and persistent pressure wore me down. Warning: the violence and sexual assault STARTS here. At the time, I did not disclose the full extent of what was happening to my parents for a variety of reasons. I simply told them I was going to a friend's house for a day and that I would text them. Her father picked me up, and Ashley was already in the car, smiling widely and acting overly cheerful. She kept touching my neck during the ride as if it were some kind of joke. Upon arriving, I slipped and got muddy. She immediately offered, perhaps too eagerly, to prepare the shower for me. I did not think much of it. After she finished, I went in, undressed, and got into the shower. When I finished and stepped out, I noticed a small red light which I realized was a camera recording me. Then I heard it muffled, heavy breathing. My heart stopped. I turned to see her eye peeking through the crack in the door. I froze in fear. My hands trembled as I turned my back, quickly got dressed, and then unlocked and cautiously opened the door. She stood at the end of the hallway, smiling. "I made tea," she said sweetly. I sat down at the table where the tea was placed. She took a seat across from me. I did not dare meet her gaze. After a tense silence, she uttered a single word. "Drink." I complied. Her smile widened. When I looked up, our eyes met, and hers were terrifying, hollow, wide, and empty. Suddenly, my head felt heavy and everything began to spin. I remember her laughter, high-pitched and twisted, echoing in my ears as I lost consciousness. The last sensation I had was her carrying me somewhere. When I regained consciousness, I found myself nude, my body aching all over. It was likely around midnight. Just like that, day one of hell commenced. I glanced around, disoriented and in pain. There was no indication of anyone nearby. I stumbled to the bathroom, locked the door, relieved myself, and then looked in the mirror. My body was covered in bruises. As I scrutinized my reflection, I heard it again, muffled breathing. I held my breath and froze. The sound did not cease. I turned slowly toward the door and saw her eye watching me through the crack once more. I averted my gaze, trembling. Then in a quiet voice she said, "I know you're in there." Silence. She grew impatient, banging on the door several times before finally forcing it open. I collapsed backward, crawling against the wall. She seized my hair and dragged me back into the room where I had woken up. There she beat me repeatedly until I could barely move. When she finally ceased, she lifted me, kissed me on the lips, and whispered, "You're so cute like this." Then she tossed me aside and locked the door behind her as she exited. I passed out again. The next time I awoke, sunlight streamed into my eyes. I heard voices, hers and that of a man, arguing outside the door. I panicked and rushed to the window, attempting to open it, desperate to escape. She entered, behaving as if nothing had occurred. "Hey, you're awake," she stated, as if we were simply friends. I stared at her in horror. She turned to the man and said, "See, I told you she was beautiful." He shrugged, replying, "Yeah, I guess." Then she leaned closer and whispered in my ear, "Behave, or else." I froze. The man advanced, kissing me and exploring my body with his hands. I attempted to push him away, but she attacked me again. I screamed in agony as she hit me repeatedly until I could no longer fight back. Then he returned, undressing me. He raped me. I felt every second of it until my body simply went numb. Once he finished, he got up, and she licked his mess off of me. They then kissed over my broken body and had sex right beside me. Time ceased. Eventually, they left me alone. I curled up in the corner and cried myself to sleep. That marked the beginning of day 2. I woke up to the sound of country music and Ice Age movies playing. I was already dressed, but I checked the door. It was locked. I waited for the opportune moment to run to her parents. I told them everything. They did not believe me. They refused to take me home or even allow me to call my mother. When I turned around, Ashley was there, smiling that same twisted smile. She led me back to the basement, tied me up again, and left for a while. When she returned, she beat me again. She grabbed my head by the hair and slammed it against the wall repeatedly until I passed out. I woke up in complete darkness. She was not present. I put on a shirt and underwear and fled. I located the sliding door of the basement, slipped out, and ran straight to the barn to hide. The smell assaulted me first. Death. Inside, I encountered dismembered animals: a deer, cats, bunnies, birds, squirrels, a turtle, and even a dog. They all shared one chilling detail: their eyes were missing. I gagged, then I heard the rattle of a shotgun. "Do you want to become like them?" she asked. The cold metal pressed against my back. I panicked and somehow managed to wrestle the gun away from her. I bolted into the woods. I ran for what felt like hours, hearing only my own breath and the heavy thuds of my feet until I tripped. When I looked up, I was met with the butt of a gun crashing into my skull. Everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I had no idea what day it was. He was raping me again. When he finished, she touched me all over. I zoned out. It felt endless. Eventually, they departed. I noticed her phone and grabbed it. It was unlocked. It was filled with photos of me naked and unconscious. She had been texting my mom, pretending to be me. I felt a cold blade press against my throat. "Drop it," she commanded. I did not comply. I began to call 911, but she seized the blade and slashed it across my chest, not enough to kill me, but enough to terrify me. She repeated, "Drop it." So I did. She picked it up, moving the blade from my chest to my neck, licking the blood off. "Good girl," she whispered. She told me that since I was behaving, she would feed me. She left and returned with a Subway sandwich and sweet tea. It was the first thing I had eaten in 3 days. I devoured it and passed out drugged again. Day 4. I woke up to find her beside me, stroking my hair. "You know what my favorite weapon is?" she asked. "A flathead screwdriver. It's perfect for plucking eyes. You know what will happen to you if you tell anyone, right?" Then she began to sit on top of me, pressing the cold metal of the flathead screwdriver against my eye. She applied more pressure and more pressure. Then she suddenly relented, laughing as though it were the funniest thing in the world. I cannot recall what transpired after that. Eventually, my mother came to retrieve me. She saw that I was in terrible condition and took me to the hospital. She did not discover the true nature of what had happened until 2 years later. Story 3. 4 years in denial. I believe you, honey, despite his biting relationship with his ex. Now, after a miscarriage and endless red flags, I scream, it's me or her. He chooses me, but can I trust him after he said he felt sad for her? I'm lost. What now? I will attempt to summarize a very lengthy story, though it will still be long. I am quite aware of how absurd this entire situation is and that I should have left when the first warning sign appeared. However, it only escalated. The warning signs kept coming, becoming increasingly evident to the point where they were almost having sexual relations right in front of me, and I would say, I believe you, darling, I love you too. A part of me still believes his assertion that he did not cheat. Perhaps I am in denial. All I know is that I am beginning to question things now, 4 years and a child later. Let's delve into our relationship. We were platonic friends who never even mentioned the topic of sex for 4 consecutive years. I was falling in love with him very quickly. I asked him if we could start dating about 5 months into our friendship. He responded that the timing was not right for him because he had a lot on his plate, which he did. So we remained friends, meeting once or twice a month. He frequently talked about his ex-girlfriend, his first love, with whom he lost his virginity. Apparently they were very close and she played a significant role in his life somewhat. They had a messy breakup because she cheated, did not communicate for a while, then became friends again and are now very close. For context, as of today, I am 33 years old and he is 42. Secretly, I was in love with him and realized this a year into our friendship. However, I kept quiet, believing he was not interested in me. He did not give any signs indicating otherwise. After 4 years, I could no longer bear it and made a move. I initiated sexual relations instead of asking to date, as that had not worked before. He was receptive to the change. After we were intimate at his home, I was practically living there, rarely visiting my own place. 6 months later, I moved in and I told him I loved him. He was not ready to reciprocate the sentiment at that time, but a year into the relationship, he said it back to me. By this time, I had essentially met all his friends, predominantly women. I felt completely fine with this. They were all lovely individuals and posed no threat. However, I had yet to meet his ex-girlfriend, which intrigued me, so I inquired about it a year into our relationship. He explained that he had not spent time with her during our honeymoon phase. Almost 2 years in, still without meeting her, I became pregnant but miscarried. We agreed we wanted a child and tried again. A couple of months later, I was pregnant again, but unfortunately, I suffered another miscarriage, which complicated matters and required surgery. A few days before the procedure, out of the blue, he mentioned that he needed to help a woman named Tracy, who owned a struggling jewelry shop. He said he would work for her 1 to 2 days a week for a few hours to assist her financially. I thought that was perfectly acceptable. He immediately started working for her the next day. Each time he returned home from her shop, she was all he discussed, and he practically recounted their day together. I was quickly realizing that she was not a good person at all. On that first day, he told her about my pregnancy and current miscarriage, to which she responded, "Sounds like she lied about being pregnant to trap you." This was my first warning sign. Others may have seen the red flags long before, but as I noticed these issues, I continually brought them to his attention. He reassured me every time that nothing inappropriate was happening, while occasionally suggesting that I had a jealousy problem, even though I did not. I did develop some jealousy over her, but I felt justified in that regard. Regardless, I asked him if he had corrected her statement, and he assured me that he had. This made me particularly irritated. Let me remind you, we shared one working vehicle, and I was in the midst of a miscarriage and recovering from surgery. The promised 1 to 2 days a week quickly escalated to him working every day. I addressed this with him after a week. He claimed, "Tracy is really struggling right now and just needs a friend and some support." I responded that I wanted to meet her, and he agreed to arrange a meeting. However, several days later, I asked if I would be meeting her, and he said, "She doesn't want to meet you right now." As I mentioned, I expressed my discomfort with the fact that she was unwilling to meet me, but it seemed futile. I was left at home every day as he worked for her. Then the hours began to change. He continued working daily, but for 3 to 5 days a week, his hours turned into 8 a.m., 9 a.m. until 1 a.m., 2 a.m. For a jewelry store, I communicated to him that this was difficult for me because he kept assuring me and I was trying to believe him, but it was detrimental to my mental health. Essentially, I made it clear that I trusted and believed him, but I was hoping he would recognize how distressing this was for me, prompting him to make the right decision to stop working for her. He did not. Instead, he allowed the person he claimed to love to sit at home alone every day following a miscarriage, feeling isolated and constantly wondering what he was doing late into the night. Oh, and I almost forgot another red flag. This incident occurred before the hours switched to a later schedule. He came home with a bite mark on his neck. I panicked and questioned him about it. He said, "Tracy does this playfully. She has always done it when we hug, despite my repeated requests for her to stop. I assure you it was just playful. Nothing is happening." I said, "So she disregards your boundaries and you still allow her to hug you?" "If I am to believe you that nothing is happening, you must understand that this could be interpreted as her marking her territory to signify that you belong to her. Do you see this?" He seemed irritated and told me I was overthinking the situation and needed to stop being jealous. His comments about jealousy were incredibly frustrating and hurtful every time they were uttered. They made me feel awful, causing me to second-guess myself and ultimately believe him. When his birthday approached, he was supposed to have the day off so we could finally spend time together. I was very excited, having missed him deeply and feeling lonely. However, late in the morning on his birthday, he began to get dressed for work, claiming it would be for just a couple of hours. I was very upset but remained silent. As night fell, I texted him, "I thought you said just a couple of hours." He replied, "She got me a cake, ice cream, and wine. We are having a few drinks, I'm having a really great birthday, and I'll come home later." I told him, do not come home. It is extremely irresponsible to drink and drive. You know how I feel about that. Just stay there. He later responded, I'll stop drinking right now, chug a bunch of water and come home in a couple of hours. I will be fine to drive then. I replied, do what you want. I'm sleeping in the spare room tonight. Just leave me alone. He got home around 3 or 4 a.m. and I could not sleep at all. By 8 a.m., I was scrolling Facebook and saw that she had tagged him in a photo. First of all, he told me early in our relationship that he did not like having pictures of himself on Facebook or allowing me to take pictures to post of us. We had never taken a picture together. He simply disliked photos. Before I even fully viewed the image, I felt extremely upset. Additionally, I was aware that he had his Facebook settings configured to require his approval for any tags. The photo showed her in a cheerleader outfit with her arm around him, capturing a selfie with the caption, I asked him what he wanted for his birthday. He said me in my old cheerleading outfit. Surprised it still fits. The comments read, you know exactly why, wink wink, to which she replied with either lol or a smiley face. At that moment, I felt utterly humiliated. It appeared as if they were romantically involved to everyone on social media. I confronted him and demanded an explanation. He claimed, I never asked her to wear that. She is just seeking attention and it is actually rather sad. I replied, if that is the case, then why on earth would you approve this post? At the very least, you could have commented that you never made such a request and stated publicly that you have a girlfriend. If I am to trust you, then this behavior suggests that she is trying to create distance between us and it is working. This is ruining my mental health. She is incredibly disrespectful and so are you at this point. I am finished. I have given you ample time to make the right choice. I began packing a bag and he pleaded with me to stay, asking what he needed to do for me to remain with him. I informed him that I did not want to give him an ultimatum as that was humiliating. He should have made the right decision on his own. He asked what the ultimatum was and I shouted, it's me or her. He responded, oh you, I will stop working for her. I want you. I chose to stay, but he continued working for her for another week or two before actually quitting. However, I never received the closure I required from the situation. I needed him to acknowledge that everything that transpired was unacceptable, that it had tormented me, and that he should not have allowed it to persist for so long. A simple expression of gratitude for my unwavering trust and support through it all would have sufficed. Recently, he began discussing his time spent with her and I said, I'm not sure we should open that can of worms. I am still very upset about that situation. You never addressed the inappropriateness of her actions or why you allowed it to occur for so long. He replied, I did not see it as wrong. I felt sad for her because she needed attention due to my moving on. That was years ago. You're causing your own misery by dwelling on this. What is your jealousy issue with her? Move on. We are not discussing this. Since then, I've felt uncomfortable with him. The fact that he would not permit me to express my feelings or acknowledge that their behavior was inappropriate and then reverted to the jealousy comment again only compounded my discomfort. He has female friends, he watches pornography, he flirts with cashiers although in a tasteful manner, and he even has a hall pass. He continuously portrays me as a toxic and jealous person when in reality I grant him far too much freedom. This is because I am not a jealous person. I do not wish to control my partner's actions. I have done everything to demonstrate my trust in him, yet he maintains that I have jealousy issues. I feel like a fool. If nothing inappropriate was truly taking place, then why could he not allow me to discuss my feelings and provide closure and validation? I am aware of what many of you may say. You are a fool. He was clearly cheating. You should have left him. You have been in denial for too long. But I am so in love with him. I desperately want to believe him. I loathe this situation immensely. I do not know how to move forward or what steps to take. We now have a toddler. He has proven his love repeatedly since that incident, and I am 100% certain he has not cheated, aside from that one potentially problematic incident. Story 4. My 34F partner, anxious and needy, says, you don't love me after I suggest we need communication work before marriage and kids. I feel attacked. If I don't hug her during her tantrums, she claims I'm punishing her. Can we break this toxic cycle, or is it time to let go? Summary, I deeply care for this woman and genuinely want this relationship to succeed, but we face at least one disagreement each week, with fewer than 25% of these conflicts being resolved in a constructive way. She is diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and often displays significant emotional neediness, frequently engaging in what feels like trauma dumping. I have explained my desire to support her, but I sometimes feel emotionally drained by these recurring situations. As a result, I have repeatedly suggested that she consult a therapist or speak with her family and friends. Despite my attempts to calm her down, it often seems insufficient, leaving her feeling angry or hurt because I cannot provide the comfort and reassurance she seeks. When she is upset, she expects me to understand that it stems from her feelings of being unloved, urging me to quickly embrace and console her. However, her outbursts tend to make me feel attacked, prompting me to withdraw emotionally, making it challenging to meet her needs. One of our more recent difficult conversations arose from her anxiety regarding her early to mid-30s and a strong desire for marriage and children. She understandably checks in with me every few months about my feelings on the timeline for these significant milestones. The last time she asked, I expressed my deep love for her and my desire to share my life with her. While I believe her one-year timeline is achievable, we must address our serious communication and relationship issues before seriously considering children. She was hurt by this, accusing me of not loving her and claiming I was merely stringing her along while displaying anger and beginning to cry uncontrollably. I did my best to comfort her, ultimately helping her to calm down. These situations often evolve into 30-minute discussions in which she expresses feelings of being hurt, unseen, or invalidated. I recognize I can sometimes be avoidant or not fully present. I also acknowledge that I am very much a logical thinker with a stoic nature. She has conveyed that she often interprets this as being cold and unfeeling. That being said, she can be triggered by minor things in my view. For instance, one night she prepared dinner frozen Trader Joe's orange chicken and I thanked her. We both agreed it lacked the crunch we prefer and I mentioned I usually cook it for an extra 5 minutes beyond the suggested time. This comment upset her, resulting in a lengthy argument. I wasn't as validating as she hoped because honestly it seemed trivial to me. She responded angrily, treating me with a semi-silent treatment throughout the night. Eventually, she went to bed without saying goodnight and closed her door. We sleep in separate bedrooms due to my snoring. She typically goes to bed before I do, and one way she likes me to express my love is by cuddling her for a few minutes when she gets into bed before I retreat to another room. However, after this interaction, I had no desire to cuddle. I explained that I felt hurt and needed space, so I was not in the mood for cuddling. She began to cry and accused me of punishing her, suggesting that I only offer her love conditionally based on her mood. It felt as though she believed I was withholding affection when she was upset, akin to a punishment. She continued, if your child were throwing a tantrum and misbehaving, you wouldn't withhold a hug and goodnight kiss, would you? I responded that this situation was completely different because one involves a child and the other an adult. This remark triggered her further. Should a good partner always provide comfort and shower their partner with affection, even when faced with negativity? She frequently claims to feel unloved or cries, which makes me suspect these are maladaptive methods from her childhood used to seek love from dismissive parents. Another instance occurred when I took her out to dinner while she was dressed in loungewear. I simply glanced at her without making any facial expressions or comments, yet she reacted angrily, believing I disapproved of her outfit. I reassured her that she looked fine for dinner, noting that I too was dressed casually, so there was no need for concern. She was upset because I did not say she looked beautiful. I felt frustrated as we were just about to have a pleasant dinner. Yet here we were embroiled in another argument about a perceived slight stemming from her anxious perceptions rather than reality, leaving her upset because I didn't communicate my thoughts exactly as she desired. I have reached a point of frustration and feel close to checking out of the relationship, contemplating whether to end it. I sometimes suspect that our differences render us fundamentally incompatible. Clearly, I cannot change to make her feel secure and loved, and I struggle to cope with her emotional instability and inability to self-soothe. My partner, 34 years old, female. She has been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and was prescribed 50 mg of Zoloft, intended for daily intake. Her doctor had also prescribed an additional pill for severe meltdowns, though I do not recall the name, and it appears she has thrown these out since then. About 1.5 months ago, she decided to cut her Zoloft pills in half, opting for half doses. When she shared this decision with me, she made me promise not to use it against her and not to persuade her to resume the full dosage, as she wishes to discontinue the medication altogether when possible. Undoubtedly, some turmoil has unfolded since she reduced her dosage. She did not consult her doctor before making this change and does not see her physician regularly. While she attended individual therapy regularly before we met, she commenced a new job upon our meeting and has subsequently diminished her therapy sessions progressively. She had committed to seeing a therapist twice weekly, but over the last 3 months she has managed only 4 sessions. She has recognized her anxious attachment style. Me, 37 years old male. I acknowledge my imperfections as well. Although I have a strong desire to find a wife and lifelong partner, I can be quite selective. I have experienced many relationships, including several longer ones, the longest lasting 3 years. My previous girlfriend expressed that while I treated her well, I did not make her feel as she wished in the relationship due to my emotional unavailability. With that partner, disagreements were infrequent, and if they occurred, we resolved them healthily, with both of us leaving the conversation with a better understanding rather than feeling hurt. I grew up in a family where discussing feelings was rare. However, I have made significant progress and feel comfortable opening up to most partners, though I find it challenging with my current partner as she interprets anything I say that isn't positive as a personal affront, leading me to increasingly suppress my feelings. She regularly critiques my words or actions or omissions, but I accept this without feeling hurt or defensive. I possess some characteristics of avoidant attachment, but I believe I fall somewhere in between avoidant and secure attachment. My avoidant tendencies have become more apparent lately, mainly due to my exhaustion from the frequency and intensity of these emotionally charged conversations in which she seeks reassurance. I have attended a dozen individual therapy sessions since we began dating to enhance my understanding of her and improve our relationship. This was my first experience with therapy, and I engaged in it for our sake. Nevertheless, she consistently criticizes me for not trying hard enough to meet her needs. Additional background. We initially dated for 5 months. The relationship began smoothly, albeit moving faster than most of my prior ones. I noticed from the beginning that she was particularly sensitive and struggled with self-regulation. A month after the initial honeymoon phase waned, she ended the relationship, claiming she felt unloved. In the aftermath of the breakup, I initially felt relief and peace but soon began to miss her. Subsequently, she reached out to me, and we reconnected. Since September, we have been back together, and things were going well enough that she decided to stay at my apartment 7 days a week while still keeping her own place. Although things were generally fine, several of our recurring issues began re-emerging weekly. She expressed a desire to move into a larger space due to my one-bedroom apartment feeling cramped for both of us. Consequently, we began searching for an apartment together. In retrospect, I suspect she may have manipulated the situation emotionally to expedite this process sooner than I was prepared for. We ultimately signed a lease together that commenced mid-January. For the past 3.5 weeks, it feels as though our relationship has worsened, experiencing increasingly frequent push-pull arguments, heightened emotions, and longer conversations. Throughout this time of living together, we have seen a couples therapist, having completed approximately 8 sessions. Except for 2 sessions, each has concluded with her feeling hurt and treating me with anger or indifference. While I understand therapists should remain neutral, I can't help but notice that many of the issues being raised seem to be centered around her rather than me. The therapist has also echoed my insights, encouraging her to engage more consistently with her personal therapist. What are your thoughts? It is evident that this relationship lacks health. Do you think we have any hope of resolving our issues? I find myself confused by her behavior and occasionally suspect that she may have borderline personality disorder or bipolar disorder, as she can oscillate from being perfectly happy to erupting in anger or withdrawing with the silent treatment in response to a minor comment, sulking for hours until she returns to apologize and cry, only to act as if nothing transpired. I would greatly appreciate any advice or support. Story 5. My boss is like a godfather in the office, confronting shady politicians and bankers with zero fear. "You're not the first clown in my office," he told an angry politician. After a heated argument, he laughed as the guy stormed out. What secrets is he hiding? Not an English speaker. This period is extremely stressful for my company due to our renewal contracts with our largest clients. Fortunately, the hell week has passed, and our 10 biggest clients have already renewed their contracts, so things should be slowing down, or so I thought until today. I have always viewed my boss as a strict but fair person, someone who does not tolerate nonsense and will not hesitate to fire someone if they anger him. He is certainly not someone to mess around with. I frequently collaborate with him on contracts, clients, and the finances of our company, so I believed I knew him well. He is a strange individual, I admit, but he seemed acceptable. He closely embodies the definition of the word genius. His speed and working method are unlike anything I have ever seen, and I swear that I have never encountered anyone like him. To give a practical example, a week ago he discovered that a substantial amount of money was disappearing into a black hole of offshore accounts, fake companies, and shady locations. Within 5 hours, he reviewed the last 15 years of the company's finances and tracked everything down like a machine. I know this because I was working with him on this matter, and I can guarantee that following his speed and precision is incredibly difficult. Additionally, he struggles with physical touch, eye contact, and maintains a cold, monotone demeanor. As I mentioned, he behaves like a machine. So after this brief description of him, I will get straight to the point. Today, there was a constant flow of people entering and exiting his office, which is not unusual since he always has someone seeking something from him. However, what caught my attention today was the type of individuals present in his office. Some of them I had to search online because I was unfamiliar with them, but most of the others are well known in my country. Still, I do not understand the nature of his relationships with these individuals, as politicians, bankers, and entrepreneurs do not seem to have any reason to approach a vice chief financial officer. Oddly, everyone present did not appear happy, and they all argued with him about finances and various interests. I genuinely wish to report everything, but I will only recount one conversation that stuck in my mind. It was a discussion between my boss and a politician who is frequently in the news for allegations of bribery and associations with unscrupulous individuals. When the man entered, he was holding a folder and stormed into my boss's office, already furious and yelling. The man said, "What is this nonsense?" My boss replied, "First, calm down and lower your voice. We are not in a circus, so stop your clown performance and tell me what you want." The man snapped, "What do I want? Explain to me what this is and why you did this." He slammed the folder onto my boss's desk, and after a quick glance at the first page, my boss responded, "This is the exact report of your situation. Did you really think I wouldn't conduct a background check on you and your business? Seriously, if you believe that, I advise you that you are more delusional than you realize." The man retorted, "What does this mean? Are you trying to threaten me? Because if so, I can end your pathetic career right now." My boss shot back, "Oh, you wish, you pathetic loser, want to threaten me? Go ahead, but be advised that if you do, I am legally obligated to publish those documents and we will see who is in charge here." "So do you want to try me, you pathetic clown?" The man replied, "Listen, let's not be so quick to judge." My boss interrupted, "I have never judged anyone in my life, and you came to me a year ago begging for help and I assisted you. But if you think you can control me now, you do not know who you are dealing with." The man exclaimed, "You ungrateful piece of trash. I hired you to do your job, and this is how you repay me, by threatening me." My boss stated, "Let me be perfectly clear, you are not the first clown to come into my office trying to intimidate me into submission. I have a reputation for a reason, so do not think for a second that you can threaten me. Do you understand? Because in 2 hours this folder will be in every news outlet." The man grumbled, "You fine, I need to calm down. So what do you want from me?" My boss responded, "Continue to do what I instructed and everything will proceed smoothly." The man argued, "How can I calm down when my face is plastered everywhere in the news?" My boss replied, "By allowing me to do my job while you do yours. You approached me with a problem and I have already contacted the appropriate individuals. So now you need to wait and stop acting like a 6-year-old throwing a tantrum." The man said, "If you say so, I will. Just remember who I am." My boss responded, "Oh, I know precisely who you are, you piece of trash. Just because you paid me for a job does not make you a god or entitled to threaten me." The man replied, "I paid you, I have given you millions, and the least I want is for this charade to disappear." My boss stated, "And it will, just wait and let the truth come out. Now get out of my office and go back to the women you like to spend your money on." As the man clenched his fists and exited, he muttered, "Crazy psycho, he thinks he is untouchable and superior," and then stormed out of the office. But when I immediately glanced into my boss's office, I saw him watching the man leave and beginning to laugh. Another incident that certainly caught my attention occurred when an extremely shady banker walked into his office. The banker's institution has a reputation for handling questionable individuals' money and financing politicians, presumably affiliated with the mafia, yet whenever there is an investigation, magically, nothing amiss is ever discovered. So you can imagine my surprise when I saw such a shady character approaching my boss. This time I could not clearly hear their conversation, but I caught snippets. I merely know that after about 15 minutes, security was called because the banker was evidently yelling phrases like, "You don't know who I am, so don't mess with me," or "Just because you are good with numbers doesn't make you a god and you can't threaten everyone." Fortunately, after about an hour, I heard my boss's voice. "I know exactly what kind of man you are. You believe that since you know a few important people, you're untouchable, but spoiler alert. I can make your emails and bank transfers public knowledge so everyone will know precisely who you are, and we will see if you still maintain your cocky attitude with me." The banker replied, "I gave you 140 million to solve the issue, so don't speak to me as if you are a saint, because you are not. If I go down, you will go down with me. Do you understand, you arrogant psycho?" My boss laughed and said, "Do you really think so? I don't believe you read the clauses of our contract." Moments later, I heard the banker exclaim, "You manipulative thief, you altered the documents. This is illegal, you have falsified the papers." My boss calmly asked, "Do you want to see the recordings from when we signed the documents?" Then more shouting ensued from the banker, and just before going down the stairs, he shouted at my boss, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You are not the saint you pretend to be, and when you make a false move, I will expose you." My boss replied, "You wish, loser." After all of this, how can one not think that my boss does not have some unusual relationships? He may not be a saint, but based on what I have overheard, he is a legend for his toughness and his ability to always have a plan B, C, D, a legend indeed.